In 2009, when the name Brittany Murphy was still deeply etched in the minds of American audiences with her sweet smile and innocent eyes, Hollywood was suddenly shaken by the news that she had died inside her own home. A young and talented star who had made a strong impact on the entertainment industry in the early 2000s suddenly passed away at just 32 years old. At first, it was believed to be an overdose. But as investigators looked deeper, the case became increasingly chilling, with a series of strange and unsettling details emerging. What really happened behind the doors of that house? Stay until the end, and you'll understand why this story continues to haunt America to this day. Brittany Murphy was born on November 10, 1977, at Georgia Baptist Hospital in Atlanta. When she was still very young, her father, Angelo Bertolotti, made the decision to move the family to New Jersey. His goal was simple: to be closer to the children from his previous marriage, but that move quietly pulled Brittany's family into the lingering shadows of his past, connections that were anything but clean. Once a World War II veteran known for his strength and resilience, Angelo carried with him a past filled with secrets. His ties to the criminal underworld had never fully disappeared. As those darker influences began to creep into Brittany's early life, her mother, Sharon Murphy, stepped in without hesitation, determined to shield her daughter from a world she knew could consume everything. Her mother, Sharon Murphy, made a decisive choice. She filed for divorce and cut off anything that could pose a threat to her daughter's safety. From that moment on, the presence of Angelo Bertolotti slowly faded, becoming nothing more than a distant and unfamiliar shadow in Brittany Murphy's life. Yet the emptiness he left behind was soon filled by something entirely different, a dream that would shape her future. At just 5 years old, during a simple outing to a restaurant with her mother, Brittany unexpectedly came face to face with two Hollywood legends, Burt Reynolds and George Segal. Without a trace of hesitation, she walked up, introduced herself with a bright smile, and boldly declared that one day she would become a star just like them. It didn't feel like childish imagination. It felt like destiny quietly revealing itself. By 1991, at the age of 13, that dream had grown far too powerful to remain confined within New Jersey. Determined to chase something bigger, Brittany Murphy turned to her mother and asked if they could leave everything behind and move to Los Angeles, the land of art, fame, and endless opportunity. Sharon Murphy didn't hesitate. She had always believed in her daughter more than anyone else ever could. And so, the two of them set off for Hollywood, ready to begin an entirely new chapter. But from the moment she arrived in that so-called promised land, Brittany quickly realized that dreams came at a cost. Small television roles came and went, and for 4 long years, she waited, patient, determined, for something big enough to finally change her life. That moment came in 1995 with Clueless, the breakout film that transformed her from an unknown newcomer into a name Hollywood couldn't ignore. At just 17, she took on the role of Ty Frazier, with her mother by her side on set at all times due to child actor regulations. But in truth, Sharon was far more than just a legal guardian. She was the constant force guiding Brittany through a world that was anything but easy. For Brittany Murphy, her mother, Sharon Murphy, was more than family. She was the only steady anchor in a Hollywood world that glittered on the surface but hid real dangers beneath. Then in 1995, just as Brittany's career was beginning to take off, everything was shaken when Sharon was diagnosed with breast cancer. In an instant, Brittany's life split in two: days on set under bright lights, and nights in hospital rooms, caring for the person who had always protected her. There was no space for exhaustion, no chance to experience a normal teenage life. Despite the weight she carried, director Amy Heckerling later recalled how Brittany handled it all with remarkable professionalism. But this was only the beginning. From that point on, forces beyond her control seemed to close in, threatening not just her career, but something far more fragile. Ironically, one of her most beloved performances wasn't even one many immediately connected to her face. As Luann Platter in the animated series King of the Hill, Brittany brought a unique blend of innocence, sass, and quiet vulnerability. It was a role that felt deeply personal, almost as if pieces of her own spirit had been woven into the character, making Luann impossible to forget. Even the simplest lines delivered by Brittany Murphy as Luann Platter, like, "Uncle Toggy, my practice hairhead has real hair on it?" still make fans laugh years later. And when Luann softly pleads, "Don't touch," it carries something deeper, almost like a young woman trying to protect the last fragile piece of what she has left. Through King of the Hill, Brittany didn't just voice a character. She gave it a soul that audiences could feel. Beyond animation, she continued to prove she could stand alongside Hollywood's biggest names. In Girl, Interrupted, she appeared next to Angelina Jolie and Winona Ryder, two of the industry's most powerful stars at the time. Even without the leading role, Brittany was the one who caught critics' attention, forcing them to pause and see her in a completely new light, with respect that went far beyond first impressions. As the 2000s began, expectations surrounding her only grew heavier. She was determined to prove she wasn't just a charming supporting player, but a true leading force in Hollywood. And while the industry welcomed her with open arms, it also revealed the hidden pitfalls waiting for anyone who let their guard down. Some of her films succeeded, lifting her higher, while others failed hard enough to leave lasting cracks beneath the surface. The hardest setback in Brittany Murphy's career came with the 2000 film Cherry Falls. Cast in the lead role of a dark and highly sensitive story about a killer targeting virginal teenagers, Brittany found herself at the center of a project that quickly spiraled into controversy. The film reached a shocking climax with a mass scene so disturbing that studios ultimately canceled its theatrical release, and audiences never had the chance to see it on the big screen. What should have been a defining breakthrough instead vanished almost overnight, leaving behind an uncomfortable silence just as her career was gaining momentum. And as she struggled to find her footing again, life delivered another painful blow. In 2003, her mother, Sharon Murphy, suffered a serious recurrence of breast cancer. Without hesitation, Brittany put everything on hold, choosing to stay by her mother's side, her closest ally, fighting for hope day by day. Fortunately, Sharon survived the surgery and continued to live on. Through all the uncertainty and emotional strain, Brittany still had one powerful voice supporting her from the world of film criticism. Roger Ebert, one of Hollywood's most respected critics, consistently recognized her talent and offered praise that stood out even in the most difficult moments of her journey. Even in films that were considered average, like Don't Say a Word, Roger Ebert still saw something special in Brittany Murphy. Her charm, her wit, and a natural comedic spark that hinted at true star power. He even compared her to the legendary Lucille Ball, a level of praise most actors could only dream of. Not long after, fate seemed to turn in her favor when she landed a role in 8 Mile. The film became a global phenomenon, fueled by the presence of Eminem, and Brittany's role as his love interest brought her even more attention. Their on-screen chemistry felt so authentic that rumors quickly spread beyond the set, and later, she confirmed they had indeed dated after filming Wrapped. The success of 8 Mile pushed Brittany into an entirely new spotlight, where, for a brief moment, everything ahead seemed full of promise. But fame rarely comes without a cost. Brittany's slender appearance soon made her a target for relentless tabloid speculation, with accusations ranging from eating disorders to drug use and a reckless lifestyle. She denied every claim, yet in Hollywood, once rumors take root, they tend to grow far beyond control. She continued to smile for the cameras, even as she quietly battled the constant scrutiny surrounding her name. In Just Married, she starred alongside Ashton Kutcher, and once again, life seemed to mirror art as the two began dating off-screen. But the relationship was short-lived. After just 7 months, they went their separate ways, with those close to them suggesting that Kutcher wasn't ready to leave behind his bachelor lifestyle. The breakup with Ashton Kutcher seemed to pull Brittany Murphy into of intense relationships that ended just as quickly as they began. In 2003, she grew close to her manager, Jeff Quatinetz. Their connection moved fast, so fast that by early 2004, he proposed. But only 4 months later, it was over. Soon after, she found herself in another relationship, this time with Joe Macaluso, a production assistant. They became engaged, and for a moment, it felt like Brittany had finally found stability. Fans celebrated, magazines painted a hopeful future for the girl from New Jersey, but once again, it didn't last. After just 8 months, the engagement fell apart. On screen, she remained bright, funny, and full of life. Off-screen, however, she was facing relentless criticism from both the public and the media. While Roger Ebert continued to support her, others were far less forgiving. Stephen Holden of the New York Times once delivered a harsh remark, comparing her to a dumb version of Meg Ryan layered with traits of Melanie Griffith. Comments like that cut deeply into what confidence she still held. Under constant tabloid scrutiny, cruel rumors, and the exposure of her private life, Brittany's sense of self began to erode. Friends later shared that she started to believe she wasn't enough, not beautiful enough, not perfect enough for the image the world demanded. And in the middle of that emotional storm, in 2006, she met Simon Monjack, a British writer and filmmaker. Calm, confident, and charismatic, he immediately drew her in, especially after she read one of his scripts, a moment that would quietly mark the beginning of a new and uncertain chapter. Drawn in by his work, Brittany Murphy reached out to Simon Monjack to express her admiration. Monjack, who had just come out of a failed marriage, quickly responded, and their connection sparked almost instantly, like something out of a romantic film. To Brittany, he felt completely different from the men before him, experienced, intelligent, and confidently presenting himself as a man of wealth and stability. But behind that polished image lay a far more troubling reality. Those who had crossed paths with Monjack often carried stories of chaos, bounced checks, questionable deals, unpaid debts, and strained relationships left in his wake. Before meeting Brittany, he had reportedly been wanted for credit card fraud, evicted from multiple homes, and owed months of unpaid rent to his ex-wife. What alarmed those around her most was not just his past, but Brittany's refusal to see it. As more details surfaced, she stood firmly by his side, defending him against every warning. When legal trouble followed him, she even paid $10,000 to help resolve a lawsuit. Love, it seemed, had pushed her to give everything, binding the two of them closely together in those early months. Still, some truths could not stay hidden. Monjack had been living in the United States on an expired visa, and in February 2007, he was arrested for immigration violations. The situation deepened the concern among those closest to Brittany. After enduring 2 failed engagements, she believed she had learned from the past. This time, with Monjack, there would be only one announcement, one decision that would change everything. In May 2007, Brittany Murphy and Simon Monjack quietly married in secret. What should have marked a joyful new beginning instead became, in the eyes of those closest to her, the start of something far more unsettling. Not long after, Monjack began showing troubling signs of paranoia, claiming that unseen forces were watching them and insisting their phones had been bugged. As time passed, that fear only deepened, slowly isolating the couple from nearly everyone around them. The only person who remained close was Brittany's mother, Sharon Murphy, who lived under the same roof. Many believed Monjack's erratic behavior and damaged reputation began to cast a shadow over Brittany's career, which noticeably slowed during this period. Yet, in a bitter twist, while tabloids accused her of drug abuse, Brittany insisted the opposite. She revealed she had a heart condition that made stimulants dangerous for her, and said the most she ever allowed herself was an occasional glass of champagne. Still, public perception rarely followed the truth. Since 2003, Brittany had been living in a lavish Hollywood Hills mansion once owned by Britney Spears. To outsiders, it symbolized success and luxury, but for her, it felt like something far darker hidden beneath the surface. She grew afraid of returning home, haunted by an unease she couldn't escape. At times, she pleaded with Simon to let them stay at the Beverly Hills Hotel, even if just for a few days, hoping to escape the invisible weight pressing down on her, but he always refused. By 2009, when Brittany looked into the mirror, she no longer recognized the person staring back. Determined to take back control, Brittany Murphy made a bold decision. She would leave the house that had come to feel like a nightmare, move to New York, and rebuild her career through independent films, where talent mattered more than scandal. She hoped the fresh start might also help Simon Monjack find stability and escape the anxiety that seemed to follow him everywhere. It was meant to be a new beginning. Instead, something far darker was already unfolding. Later in 2009, Brittany, Simon, and her mother, Sharon Murphy, traveled to Puerto Rico for her role in The Caller. But on the very first day of filming, Simon was asked to leave the set. The reason remains unclear to this day, with conflicting accounts surrounding what really happened. What is certain is that Brittany never made it beyond that first day. Some say she walked away, Others claim she was dismissed, while official records simply describe it as a mutual decision. Despite the setback, they stayed for another week, trying to lift their spirits by the ocean. But that brief escape carried hidden consequences. Both Sharon and Simon fell seriously ill with heavy colds, and on the flight back to the U.S., Simon suddenly stopped breathing midair. In a moment of panic, Brittany performed CPR and managed to save him, a terrifying experience that lingered long after the plane landed. Back home, the pressure only intensified. Tabloids once again flooded the headlines with speculation, while Brittany's health continued to decline. Battling symptoms like shortness of breath, pneumonia, and extreme exhaustion, she began relying on multiple prescription medications just to get through each day. Emotionally drained and physically weakened, she found herself overwhelmed by constant judgment and ridicule. On the night of December 19, 2009, Brittany struggled to breathe. Pale, sweating, and visibly frightened, she sat in silence as her mother urged her to call a doctor. But Brittany refused, fearful that seeking help would only turn her into another headline, another target for public mockery. She was simply too exhausted to keep fighting. Hoping things would improve, she agreed to schedule a doctor's appointment for Monday. But that moment would never come. In the early hours of December 20, 2009, as a power outage struck the house and the backup generator failed, events took a tragic turn that would soon shock the entire world. In her final moments, Brittany Murphy cried out to her mother in fear, whispering words that would never be forgotten, "Mom, I'm dying. I love you." She seemed to sense what was coming. About an hour later, paramedics rushed her to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, but it was too late. She suffered cardiac arrest and passed away just 2 hours after the 911 call. She was only 32 years old. The following day, an autopsy was conducted, and after weeks of waiting, the official report was released 2 months later. The cause of death was listed as acute pneumonia, anemia, and complications from prescription medications. For many, that explanation brought closure. Tributes poured in, colleagues shared memories, and the noise of speculation began to fade. But the story didn't end there. Just 5 months later, her husband, Simon Monjack, was found unconscious in the same home and died under eerily similar circumstances. His autopsy cited the same causes, pneumonia and anemia. The coincidence was too disturbing to ignore, sending shockwaves through Hollywood once again. Left behind was Brittany's mother, Sharon Murphy, devastated after losing both her daughter and son-in-law in less than 6 months. Driven by grief, Sharon put forward a chilling theory. She believed toxic mold inside the house had slowly poisoned them. Brittany had often complained of feeling unwell at home, but no one imagined the danger could be hidden in the very place meant to keep them safe. Just as the tragedy seemed to settle into one explanation, another voice emerged. Angelo Bertolotti, Brittany's biological father, demanded independent toxicology tests and made a far more alarming claim. He believed his daughter and Simon had been poisoned. Shockingly, he pointed suspicion toward Sharon herself. The media quickly turned the situation into a sensational family conflict, focusing on accusations while overlooking one unsettling detail that had surfaced before: Simon's growing fear that they were being watched. At first, his claims sounded like paranoia, until new allegations surfaced. Julia Davis, a former Department of Homeland Security employee, came forward with disturbing statements. She claimed that after exposing security failures, she became a target of government pressure, and that Brittany had supported her during that time. According to Davis, both Brittany and Simon were later placed under surveillance, with attempts even made to deport Monjack. In the 2012 documentary Top Priority, The Terror Within, Davis presented claims suggesting that Monjack's fears may not have been entirely unfounded. What made the story even more chilling was the timing. Just days after he spoke publicly about being watched, Brittany died. Years passed, but the mystery only deepened. In 2019, Angelo Bertolotti died at the age of 92,